This week on Ryan and Megan, we're going to discuss how you can travel locally near your home.
Welcome into episode number 10. We are Ryan and Megan. Megan, your hosts of the podcast. We are traveling physical therapists. We've been traveling since 2020. And what makes us unique is now we are traveling with our family, 2 little girls.
Yes, we are a traveling family. We live kind of a hybrid lifestyle, which is actually really good for today's topic because we're going to kind of go over how we travel like locally, like in our tax home.
Right. So how we still stay travelers, even though we come home for part of the year is kind of what we're discussing. But before we get into that, please consider leaving a 5-star review wherever you listen or watch. Give it a thumbs up, all the good stuff just to help promote it and get it out to the ears that might benefit from hearing it.
Yes, you can find this podcast on anything on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts. If you're watching here on YouTube, really what helps the algorithm is if you leave a comment. So let us know what you think about traveling locally, if you plan to do it, if you're interested, if you're not interested, if you think we're crazy. But leave a comment. That really helps the algorithm. And so that'd be another awesome thing you could do.
It'd also be great to know what kind of questions you have. So it would give us some insight. Okay, so talking topic, what we do when we are in town.
Yeah, so we get this question a lot of how do you travel local? Because I think we've done enough content now about like on Instagram and stuff that we're back home. Mm-hmm. And we truly are. This is where our tax home is here in Missouri. And we come back often. Since we started having kids, we kind of fell into this hybrid lifestyle where part of the year we're back home near family. And then the other part of the year, we take contracts and we go away from our tax home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think one of the first biggest questions that we get a lot is, can you travel or take a contract in your tax home? So that's exactly what we're talking about doing. That is what we do. We come back home. We're in our tax home. It's always stayed the same. We've never moved our tax home. And we take jobs here.
And we take travel contracts.
Yes.
Or travel assignments here in our home. And so we started, when was the first one? I guess when we came back into town for...
like 2021, I think.
To have Reagan.
In September. Yep.
Yeah.
September,
actually,
October.
we were probably here a little bit. No, you're probably right.
Uh-huh.
So we before we had our first daughter, Reagan, we knew we wanted to be home about 6 months before you gave birth. Mm-hmm. And so we were way out in the state of Washington having fun, just us two. We didn't have a family yet. At that point in time, we had been traveling pretty well full time. We never came back home except for holidays and stuff to visit family. Mm-hmm. We were renting a room from my parents. That was our home here in our tax home. And so that was really the first time we kind of came back and looked for travel contracts in our area. And so just like how you would look for a contract, if you wanted to go to Idaho or Montana, we looked for contracts around St. Louis, Missouri. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, there was actually quite a few. And we got hooked up with a really great home health company at one of the local hospitals here. There's a lot of big hospitals in St. Louis if you're not from the area. And we signed on to a 3-month contract, and then we ended up extending. Both of us signed a contract. So we were both working there, and we worked there for 6 months. Megan went out because she had Reagan. Mm-hmm. And then I took a little time off in between contracts, but then I came right back to the same job, and I ended up working there for a full year.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that in my head, trying to figure out how long you were there, but I think it was like 11 months, almost 12 is what it was, but basically a full year at the same travel assignment.
Yep, at the same home health company, and it was a travel contract the whole time. Every 3 months, I would just re-up because they needed help.
Or, when we were negotiating the next extension of the contract, we would try to get more time because we did know we would like to stay in town for, a certain amount of time as our daughter grows and then head on the road. So
we were really aiming for 6 months before birth and 6 months after birth was kind of our minimum.
Yeah. But that's how we did it. We just extended the contract just like you normally would if you were away from home. Mm-hmm. The only major difference is how your pay breaks down. So I think we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll kind of discuss that in detail because it is different. The way you're paid is different than a normal contract, but everything else in that travel contract stays the same. Mm-hmm. And so we technically work for the travel company. We talked to our recruiter who got us the job here in our tax home. We're discussing with them for the extension. And then we get all of our benefits through them, whichever ones that we want to take. What are some other things that kind of stays the same? You still sign on the dotted line. You have your requested days off in that contract. Mm-hmm. So things we've went over in the previous episodes where we kind of go through a travel therapy contract, we do that. It just happens to be the location is a commutable distance from our home.
Yeah. And then we'll also, the pay breakdown is different. But then we'll also talk about like how it affects your tax home later, if you're interested in that, like wondering if it's going to mess stuff up or if it's going to help things or what's going to go on. So
I think another question that we usually get kind of on that topic a little bit is, can you travel full-time in your tax home, or can you travel full-time locally? Mm-hmm. Meaning people want to get into travel, but maybe they don't want to like go out of state. Maybe it isn't like the adventurous, like how we want to travel, where we want to leave, but they want to do travel, but maybe just around their tax home. And I think where they get tripped up is they hear the rule where we even talk about it, how you don't want to stay 12 months in a 24-month period.
Oh, you're explaining it now.
Well, this is just why I think they asked this question.
Yeah.
It's because you don't want to say 12 months in a 24-month period at a travel contract. But the reason why we say that is because that moves your tax home to that location. So if you're hanging out in Portland and your tax home's not in Portland, Oregon, and you're really loving it there and you just keep re-upping your contract, after 12 months, you want to leave, because otherwise it looks like to the government that you basically move there, and so your tax home moves there, unless that's what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. But when you are taking a travel contract in your tax home, like we do, you can work there over 12 months. You can work there for as long as you want, because you're going to you're not going to get those housing stipends. They're going to be fully taxed, which we'll discuss a little bit later. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can travel technically full-time in your tax home. And
that was probably, if that's your plan, that's probably going to mean you're going to multiple different contracts or taking jobs at different companies. I would say it would be very rare to get a company who's willing to keep
paying you a premium, extra money to be a traveler forever.
For over 12 months.
Yeah, it would be very, very hard. They would eventually want to hire someone permanent because they can pay them a lot less.
And that might be a little bit of what happened to us this time around. So with Ryan's current contract, he returned back to the same facility that he worked at last time we were home with Reagan. We came back to that same facility when we came home for Lainey, which is great because we love working for them. But they have not been able to extend his current contract another 3 months, which would get us to that 6 month after birth point. And so we kind of don't know exactly what changed. It seems like they've been able to hire on a lot more permanent staff, which is great. That's great for companies. That's better for patients. But we are travelers and we're kind of sticking to it to at least try it. So we don't know if they're tired partly of signing him as a traveler and they really just wanted to try to push him into that permanent position, or if it's truly they just don't have enough space. So, keep in mind, if that's something you're trying to do and you've got a really good thing going with a company, our relationship, I think, is still good, but they might try to push you into signing on.
You got to understand why they have the need for travelers. A lot of the time it's because they want to hire a permanent therapist, but they just haven't been able to yet. And so if they hire a permanent therapist while you're there on contract, odds are they don't need you anymore, they're not going to pay you twice as much to still do the same amount of work. So, you might find yourself not getting an extension, or, a lot of times you build good rapport. They're going to ask you, hey, would you want to be permanent? They might give you a little bit more of an ultimatum. But what's nice is if they're in need of a therapist to see patients, they are much rather, they know you if you've already been there and have worked a contract. They're much willing to keep you if they're going to keep any traveler because you're already trained up. You know how their system works. You know the people.
Yeah.
So you do have a little bit of an in. In our situation, I think it was maybe a little bit of both. I had been there, like I said, for almost a year that first go around. Then we left and traveled outside our tax home. We did that for about 6 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back for having our second child. And let's see, how long was I there?
6-7 months that you've returned back.
6-7 months on this contract.
Yeah.
Okay. So like total, I've taken almost a year and a half, just under 2 years of travel contracts with this one company. So you could see why they were looking, and they recently hired a ton of therapists, which is really great for their company. So there just wasn't a need for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Ryan
think
has been asked, I think it I think it might be good for you to share kind of how you've responded to companies when they do reach out and say they would like you to sign on with them, because I think you do a good job of kind of keeping that like relationship healthy, but also saying, we're going to try travel.
Yeah. I think it probably does play a bigger role when you're traveling in your tax home, because most of the time they get to know you and they know, hey, you're from here, or hey, you live here, your whole family lives here. Why are you a traveler, And so if they like you as a therapist, they might offer you a permanent job. And I've been offered multiple times. And usually what I just say is I just tell them the truth. I'm very upfront and honest with them. I say, hey, I really love working for you guys. If I ever consider going permanent, you're probably going to be the first people I reach out to. Mm-hmm. But right now, for me and my family, we really want to try this travel thing a little more. And so this is kind of what we're planning to do. So I'm not looking to go permanent yet. I hope you can still keep me on as a traveler for a certain amount of time if I can be helpful to you. Mm-hmm. And they always seem to be real receptive to it, because I think people honestly see the allure of travel, and they see like, yeah, you can go for it, right?
Yeah.
But if there's ever a point where you can't, then reach out to us, because we love working with you.
I just think that's such a good tip, because I know how I would respond. I would want to make them like happy and think that I'm interested in taking a permanent position, and I would be slightly interested in taking a permanent position, but then I would be like, no, we're going to keep travel. So I would not be as direct as you, but I think, you need that directness and that professional relationship.
Yeah, the directness, I think, is respected on the other end, or it should be, as long as you're not mean about it, and you can just say, hey, that's not quite what I want to do with my career right now. And because you're in control, and you just kind of let them know what you're thinking. And then you also compliment them that if you've had a good experience there. So you keep that door open as a possibility.
Yeah. So before we move on to our next like traveling at home solution, I want to share Medbridge. You guys, our license renewals are coming up. They're coming up fast. Okay. So you want to check out Medbridge for all those extra CEUs that you have not completed. And we have a code for you. It's outdated. Okay. If y'all were around when we first started, we were joint movement DPTs. So our code is JMDPT. Type that in. That'll get you like hundreds of dollars off of a membership. So check that out if you don't already have a membership, and if you've got CEUs that you need to complete.
Yeah, Medbridge is really great. We do a lot of our CEUs on that. I highly recommend the pain neuroscience course with Adrian Lowe, or Lau. I can't remember how he pronounces his name. That one's really great. Use our code. Again, it's like $175 off, which is real worth it. So check that out. So another option for traveling local is an option that we have used for you, and we might have to use more in the future if no travel contracts are near and we're wanting to come back home, is working some PRN.
Yeah. So as I am mainly staying home with the kids, I have also gotten into PRN positions just so that I can have some work available to me and I can keep my resume up to date and I can keep good relationships with companies that I already have relationships with. But this is something that might be an option that could take a bigger role if you were trying to find full-time 40-hour work, but you couldn't find a contract. You could turn to PRN and try to piece together a few different companies that could offer you hours throughout the week. So it's not nearly as stable. I mean, travel is already unstable, but you at least sign a contract that says, hey, we're going to have you work 40 hours a week. This is your pay. With PRN, you really have no clue what hours are going to be available. So it's way more volatile, but
Yes,
it's an option.
It's definitely an option, especially if you're going to do it temporary and then hop back into like a travel contract outside your tax home. And but you might have to piecemeal it a little bit because a lot of times PRN wise, sometimes places need so much help that they're willing to give you full-time hours, but most of the time it's more part-time. And then you're going to probably need to work 2 or 3 places and put your 40 hours together like that. Now, we have not done that to get a full-time schedule.
No.
I know when we were looking to stay around home, I looked into some PRN a little bit, and it did look like I could get on to a few different places, but there just wasn't strong enough guarantee, and we had a better option, travel in-state. So we decided to go with that. But again, that might be something we look into a little bit more. And then you got to understand they're not going to pay you as much as travel. So they're going to go with a very standard rate for your area, which for us, it was a lot lower than travel pay, which financially that kind of puts you in a little different position. So something also to consider, but it's the flexibility that you're getting with PRN because you can work there for as long as you want. And then once you're ready to move on, then you can move on.
So what our goal is for this whole working at home part-time thing, at least for us, is we would love to be able to be home 6 months, on the road 6 months, and just kind of put life together that way.
Yeah, I would say it's not like a hard 6 months. We always say that half and half, but it kind of shakes out close to that. Obviously, travel is a little unpredictable, as we are always finding out. But that's kind of our like idealistic goal would be to get to come back home to our house and let the girls be here with their grandparents. And we work, I work some travel contracts in the city, and then we go pick some fun places to take 1 to 2 contracts away from town, to let the girls see some new places and us see some new places. And that would be kind of our ideal.
Yeah. And we've been kind of in this in between, where the travel contracts away from home are taking kind of a different shape, and we're trying to figure out what we want that to be, because when it was just us, we wanted to like go see really cool places and travel far. Now that we have the girls and it's so new of having both of them, we definitely want to stay close for doctor's visits and support. But they are going to be young for, I mean, not forever. It goes really fast, but they're going to be young for a little while. So we're kind of figuring out, while they're young, do we stay in state even when we're away from home and just get the benefit of making more money and still having flexibility? Or do we want to take those adventures even at a young age, and kind of what that looks like? And is the adventure worth it with all their schedules, or is traveling in state worth it when you're not like seeing cool things? So we're just trying to figure out what our goal is going to be with travel with the girls. But I think there's enough pros that the goal can shift to different pros.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're not really sure how it'll shake out. We'll let you guys know. It's all a big trial run. There's not too many people traveling as families out there or putting content out there. So hopefully we can put out our good and our bad as we do it, and that can be some benefit to you. So that's like our goal for this hybrid lifestyle. Now, the reality here comes the reality check. It really depends on the job market. And when I mean job market, I mean travel job market. Because just like we found out here recently, I wasn't going to get extended. We were hoping to stay until about February of next year. And that just wasn't going to happen. So then we were like, okay, what does a job market show for travel jobs in St. Louis? And there was a few, but they weren't ideal contracts. They weren't highly suggested by my recruiter. And so I listened, and that was it. The job market just swayed in a way that was like, okay, there's nothing really here. So do we wait it out, or do we start opening up our radius? Do we leave a little earlier than we were intending? And that's really kind of the reality of this local travel. It is not a set in stone thing. You might not be as lucky as me and get to stay for 6 to almost a year at one place. You might bounce around a lot. You might get one good contract in your tax home, and then there's just nothing else available because of how the market rolls. Especially when you're going into like the November, December, all the way up to about February timeframe when everyone's deciding, do they need travelers? There's kind of a lull in the job market. So it's things you got to consider, and you got to be very, very flexible with this lifestyle, especially if you're limiting yourself to one location, your tax home. Like we say all the time about like the travel triangle, when you are really specific on a location, you got to be very, very, very flexible on your setting and your pay. And I think that's huge here.
Yeah, it definitely comes into play. And that's part of also deciding what's more important. Is it more important to be home and to be at a very poor job? Or can we hack, moving away a little bit earlier? We're still going to be moving away at some point, so might as well try it for a better job. So
now, one of the other things that we'll say about traveling locally is you want to have a successful location. So some of the keys to like a successful location, and what we mean by that is, where is your tax home located? Our tax home is located just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. And really, St. Louis is a big city. There's tons of hospitals here. I think that's key. Tons of hospitals, tons of outpatient clinics. So there's a big opportunity for travelers, a big need for travelers. And that gives us the most options possible when looking to come back home for a travel contract.
Yeah. So if you're trying to pick where you want your like home base to be, if you've got the flexibility to move it, definitely think about, how high of a need they're going to have in that area for travelers. If your tax home or your home base is a place that's by family and that's your biggest desire and your biggest priority, and there's not a lot of jobs around that area, then you might have to kind of figure out some other solution for supplementing your income during that time, or you might have to try to take really high paying jobs while you're away from home and save back money to fund the time when you are back in your tax home, because it really does depend on, how many jobs are in that area to sustain you.
Right. And it makes sense. If your tax home, if your hometown is a little bitty hometown in the middle of Missouri, and you have like one local hospital and they have like 2 therapists on staff, you're probably not going to get a travel job there.
I mean, sometimes rural areas have travel jobs, but it's going to be one. Maybe,
right. But sometimes. Consistently. And so your bigger metropolitan areas do seem to be a little more successful. And we'll probably do a podcast in the future on moving your tax home or like choosing your tax home. And this would maybe be a good reason if you're looking to do a hybrid lifestyle. You might want your tax home somewhere kind of ideal for that setup.
So let's get into how your pay is going to be different as a traveler in your tax home. And it's pretty basic. I think
it's pretty basic, but it's very important.
Yeah. And you should just do it.
Okay.
Yeah. You should.
So normally as a traveler, you get those tax-free housing stipends and food stipends. So you get stipends that are tax-free. And really that's one of the huge benefits as a traveler, because then your taxable income at the end of the year during tax season looks very, very low.
And you get those because you've got dual expenses.
Yeah, because you show dual expenses. We won't go too far into that. That's with the tax stuff. But when you are traveling or taking a travel contract in your tax home, you cannot take those travel stipends or those housing stipends, food stipends on your travel contract. You cannot take those tax-free because you're not showing dual expenses because you're living in your tax home, which is one of your areas or residence that you're maintaining.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't mean you can't take a travel contract in your tax home. What it means is that instead of getting those stipends, you need to have your full pay taxed. So what that looks like is normally your hourly pay is very low, so those stipends can be very high, so you can get more tax-free money. When you sign a contract in your tax home, all those travel stipends go away, and so your hourly goes very, very high.
And the hourly is the one that's taxed.
Right. And so ultimately, all the money coming to you is fully taxed. And
so you're still getting paid a higher traveler's rate, but you're not able to claim part of that pay as tax-free. So now it's all getting taxed, and that does take a big chunk out of what you end up taking home.
It can take a big chunk out of it. So you really want to look at the numbers, and you want to let your travel company know, hey, this is in my tax home. I need to take it fully taxed. And they can adjust that, but maybe they don't know quite exactly where you live. So you need to let them know that it's in your tax home.
Yeah.
Because if you're taking those tax-free stipends, that's against the IRS rules, and you can get in trouble if you get audited.
You owe a lot of taxes.
Yeah, a lot of back taxes. But as long as you take it all taxed, then it's gonna work. Everything else in the travel contract is gonna work the same.
Yeah. So what are the implications for your tax home? We kind of reviewed it a little bit, but if your tax home is, say for us, St. Louis, Missouri, and we take a job in St. Louis, Missouri, what is that going to do to your tax home? Is it going to weaken it or strengthen it?
So it does help solidify your tax home because you're doing one of the three things of maintaining a tax home, and that's you're showing. I want to make sure I get the verbiage right. You're having regular business in your tax home, and what regular business means is you're there, you're working, you're playing, you're living. And so if you do that for 3 months, that's really helping solidify like this as your tax home, because again, the money you're bringing in from your income, you're getting it fully taxed, and that's all showing up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you're swiping your credit card at the gas station in place, that's swiping that you've been in that tax home.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it meets that requirement. And
so
then
back
also,
home for 30 days.
Right. It also meets the 30 days requirement. So you want to be back in your tax home for at least 30 days a year. And but the one thing is you don't have to show dual expenses, right? Because you're going to be living in your tax home. So you don't have to show rent in your tax home and rent at your travel contract because they're overlapping. So you don't have to pay the extra rent.
Mm-hmm.
So that might save some of the money that you'll probably end up paying in taxes.
Right. So when you're out of town on a travel contract, you might be paying like your parents' rent for a place that you're like a room that you're renting from them. When you come back home for a contract, you don't have to continue paying them for that unless you really are living there and need to pay them rent for that space. But if you come back home to a house like we have, or if you rent a different space, that counts as your rent and you don't have to, do both of those at that time.
And I think this would be a good time to talk about like housing in your tax home, which kind of sounds funny because it can be as simple as you have a place there that you've been paying for. So if you've been maintaining an apartment in your tax home, you're going to go stay at your apartment while you work in your tax home. For us, we own a house. And so every time we come back into town, we have our house that we come back to, and that's where we stay to work. One way that we do that is we do rent out our basement on Furnished Finder, and that kind of helps offset, while we're away from home, our mortgage. But we keep one space available to us. So that's one thing people always ask, like, well, should I rent my apartment or rent my home when I'm away on contract, and then I can use it when I'm back? What I will say is you do need to keep at least one little space for you, designated for you, to be showing that dual expenses. So that could be as simple as like one of your bedrooms in your home is your bedroom. Everything else you can rent out. For us, it's the upstairs, and then downstairs we rent out. And so it can be as simple as that. Now, if you're like what we did before we owned a home, we rented a room from my parents. If you're in that situation and you're wanting to come back home, but you're not wanting to live in that room at your parents' house, then there's other options that you can do, but you want to try to maintain that room probably in case you do leave. And so it could look a little bit more like, okay, maybe you have an RV and you're staying at the RV park, and you still have that room available. So once you leave, you can start paying rent back to it.
Yeah. You would just resume kind of your contract with your parents.
Yeah, you would pause
renting.
it and then resume it.
Yeah. Before we head on over to what we've been up to, we want to remind you to check out ryanandmegano'Rear.com for all of your resource needs. We got episodes of YouTube from YouTube on there. We have blog posts. We've got recruiter recommendations, all the things. So check it out, ryanandmegano'Rear.com.
So what have we been up to, Megan?
We've been up to Halloween this past week. It was really fun. It was Reagan's first time, like, understanding. Like, last time, I don't think we even took her out.
Yeah, I think we had a carrier. I don't even know if we went trick-or-treating.
But it was pretty cute to see her, like, catch on to saying trick or treat and saying please. And she dressed up as Dora because that's her favorite show right now. She absolutely loves it. So we were trying to tell her to say, like, hola, and say my name is Dora, and use the Spanish that she's picked up from the show.
She loved it. She thought it was so much fun. She couldn't believe, wow, you just go up to people's houses and you get candy after you talk to strangers.
And I think that's probably like the second time she's really had candy. She got to have some at Easter, which when I think back to that, I'm like, wow, she was real young to have some candy at Easter. But she also loved that part. So.
And then Lainey, she was going to wear a monkey suit, which sounds like harsh, but it was because Reagan was going to be Dora, and then Lainey was going to be Boots. And it was a nice warm outfit.
Very warm.
Because
it was like below freezing almost.
It was like I
think the low was supposed to be 27. So
yeah, it was like 27, high 20s, low 30s for Halloween. So we didn't actually trick or treat that long. We went to a few houses and then we headed back to Grandma and Grandpa's. But it was a lot of fun. Just little experiences with your kids that means a lot.
Yeah. The other thing that we have been doing is we've put up our Christmas decorations, and we put them up before November 1st.
Megan had the Christmas tree up before Halloween.
I did.
Hearkened.
I did. But it is because we are about to go on contract, and we're going to be away from the house, and I want it to feel like Christmas when we're back home for the holidays. I don't want to rush the decorating. I don't want to not get around to it. So I thought I need to just get it up now. It'll be done when we come home, and it'll feel like Christmas.
Hey, Christmas is here. You know, some people say as soon as Halloween's over, Christmas season's here.
I kind of think I'm on board with that.
You're kind of for that? What do you guys think? When do you start the Christmas season?
I can be thankful for Christmas.
Yeah, you're just lengthening out the cheery
because
season.
If you wait until Thanksgiving for your Christmas decorations, it's like only a month or less.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it
math.
is, but but that's not enough time.
Well, the O'Rear household is Christmas upped right now, and I think we're even bringing a small Christmas tree for the RV.
We are. Hopefully there's a place for it. We don't really know. That's the other thing that we have been discussing is kind of our RV plans. It's the first time we're going to be moving into this RV full time. So we really have no clue like how the organization is going to work out, and where we want things and the things that we need to change. So there's a lot of like brainstorming and troubleshooting and problem solving coming up.
And we're not new to RVing, but this RV is new to us. We've done some trips in it, but a weekend trip or like our Texas trip where we were gone for a week and a half or so, a little different than when you're like parked at a travel contract and living in it full time. You really get to find out like what parts of this RV are working for us, what's not, what do we need to modify, what do we need to update. And so that'll be kind of fun to shape it into exactly what we need. So I'm slightly looking forward to it.
Yeah.
As always, when it's like happening and it's an inconvenience, I'm sure it'll be a little stressful. But hopefully we can do some like Instagram posts, maybe some stories, maybe some reels on different things we're upgrading in our RV, so you guys can follow along.
Yeah.
The other thing we've been up to is we've never mentioned this on the podcast or even on our Instagram or anything, but we've been working, well, Megan's been working really hard on this pillow company that we launched called Playful Pillows Shop on Etsy. So we just opened up a little small Etsy shop, and it's exactly what it sounds like. They're just kind of fun printed pillows on there, and it's actually been kind of fun to scratch the creative itch, I would say, of like designing the pillows. And we're working with a really cool company that makes the pillows, so they're made to order. They're like a custom piece, and they have this special dye process.
Yeah, it's like a reactive dye, so it's like real soaked in there.
Yeah, that's a great word to put into it. It like really soaks into that pillowcase, so it doesn't fade. You can wash it.
It's not like a vinyl that's like put onto the pillow or
right.
anything.
It's not like Megan and I hand making these. It's like professionally done. And but what's cool is we can create the designs and make some really fun pillows.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we're selling our different designs on there. And then what happens is that pillowcase, you order one from us, our shop, and then it gets shipped to you. And so we got some cool ones out there, but so that's been fun. But if you go on there, we have tons of designs already. But if you're seeing something that you're thinking maybe like, okay, I have a friend that I want to get a Christmas gift for, or maybe a stocking stuffer for one of your kids, and you're thinking like they really love football, or they really love avocados, or I have a friend that's a cat lady, and so she needs one with just a ton of cats.
My daughter really loves Dora, so maybe she would like freak out to have a Dora pillowcase for Christmas, you know.
So what we say, and really we only have announced this on the podcast because we don't necessarily do custom stuff, but send us a message and say, hey, I'd really love if you guys designed a pillow with, avocados all over the place, or it to look like this. Let us know, and we'll see if we can get it done, and then your design will be up there.
That would be so fun. I also think it'd be fun to do like a gag gift, like you were saying the other night when we talked, category where it's just like maybe like super ugly pillowcases or really funny joke pillowcases that you give for like White Christmas or something like that.
Right.
No, is that the game? White Elephant.
White Elephant. This is like the perfect season to get, most people are very privileged and they have about everything they need. So it's kind of hard to figure out, like, what do you get your parents or your grandparents who have everything? And this can be just something kind of fun. If they're really into a certain topic or item, then you can get them just a fun pillowcase to throw on there. If you really love camping and you take a camp pillow with you, this is a perfect thing to use. Kind of silly.
Message us. Let us know. You guys are the first ones to hear about it, and we'd love your feedback and to make some things for you guys. No
one really needs a pillowcase, but we all usually use a pillowcase. And so it really is a good gift. Yeah. So let us know. All right. Cool. Well, let's roll into, before we go into what's been good, what's been poopy, if you are interested in traveling locally or domestically, I guess it wouldn't be abroad, but traveling out in the States, and you need a travel recruiter to get started, always get a recommended recruiter. And we love to share the recruiters who we personally work with. These are people that we've taken contracts with and that we feel confident in. And so all you have to do is use the little link down in the description. Just click that. It's going to take you to a form. You just fill out your name and tell us a little bit about yourself so we can kind of pair you with the recruiter we think that you would work best with. And we'll share some of our recruiters with you to get you started. Yeah.
So Ryan, what's been good?
I wrote it down. Oh,
you have to think about it.
Yeah. So what's been good is I winterized our RV maybe a weekend ago. And really in my head, I thought, well, why am I winterizing if we're just going to be in it in a month? Well, then it got really a cold spell through and it was below freezing temperature. So I'm really glad that I did that because we could have had frozen pipes.
Yeah. that was a good call. What's been poopy?
What has been poopy is just this like last week, we've had 2 car repairs, 2 different cars. That's cost us money. And then now we're getting our AC and heat pump replaced. So a whole new AC furnace system in our house. Welcome to home ownership. It just drains you of all of your money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a tough month for sure.
All right, what's been good?
I think I'm just going to copy yours because I can hear my child screaming, and I think it would be good to go ahead and just wrap it up so I can go rock my sweet, sweet baby to sleep.
Well, thank you for listening. Hopefully this was helpful. If it was, hit that like button. Consider subscribing to our channel. And as always, until next time, see ya.